If you've been learning a language for some time, do you happen to ask yourself questions such as, what level am I at? Am I actually making progress? When am I going to reach the next level? Am I improving my grammar, pronunciation, or fluency in that target language? Hi, my name is Luca from Lampariello.com, and today we're going to talk about how to measure progress when learning a foreign language. There is really nothing wrong with asking yourself where you stand and where you're going. I did that all the time. Back in the day, when I was at school and I was 15, I can remember as clear as day that I was jotting down all my language goals, and I was fantasizing about learning tons of languages, and I was writing down the level at which I thought I was and where I wanted to go. With time and experience, I've just realized that while setting up goals is important, the most important and efficient way to tackle how to measure foreign languages is actually to set up a system which will allow you to learn in the long term, and that is developing the right habits. How do I build a system? The people who follow my blog have noticed that I've recently published some logbooks where I keep meticulously, I would say, track of my learning process. I think that having a logbook is a great idea. You can keep track of your progress, but how do you measure progress? Well, one thing that I've recently added, and I think it's making a difference, is actually to add some self-reflection exercises. After writing what I did and how long it took me, I normally spend 2 or 3 minutes, even 10 minutes when it's necessary, jotting down the things I did and asking myself whether the things I'm doing are actually good for me and how I can refine them. In fact, the most important goal is not only to keep track of my progress, but actually to refine the system through which I am actually learning. So I ask things such as, am I using the right resource? Is this resource nice and good and comprehensible and intelligible and interesting for me at this level? What else can I add? How can I organize my time? And these bits and pieces of information are actually adding up, and they're helping me refine the system better and better. Refining the system means to be able to learn in the long term. Language learning is always and always will be a marathon, and if you want to be successful, the most important thing you want to do is actually stick to it over the long haul. And with time, I've developed a system which allows me to learn not only one language, but 2 or even 3 at the same time. In language learning, there are things you can more or less measure. For example, the amount of words that you know. You can save them, you can look back at them and say, okay, this is more or less the list of words that I know. But unfortunately, language learning is not just a corpus of knowledge, it's also a skill that you develop, and it entails a number of sub-skills in and of itself and within itself. For example, being able to speak, being able to write, being able to read, and so on and so forth. And unfortunately, it is much more difficult to not only to keep track of this, but also to measure whether you're actually making progress or not. In his popular book, Peak: Secrets from the New Science of Expertise, the author Anders Ericsson makes the case that experts in any field actually operate within a consistent framework that they build. And this framework is based upon consistent mental representations that these experts develop with time. It's a really, really interesting book, and I recommend you read it. So how do I operate within the language learning framework? What are my mental representations? I divide language learning mainly in 3 areas: beginner, intermediate, and advanced. Actually, I define my level according to the resources that I use, the what, and how I use them, the how. Let me give you an example. If I'm at the very early stage of language learning, that is, I'm a beginner, I always use a book like Assimil or Teach Yourself or another resource, and I apply my bi-directional method to it. So I define the what, I know the how, and for me, I am at this beginner stage. So after I finish Assimil, I do not ask myself whether I have reached an intermediate level or not. For me, it's actually automatic. And once I get into the intermediate realm, intermediate ground, whatever you want to call it, I just change the what, that is the resource or resources, and I also change the how. A lot of people think that my bidirectional translation is a complete method to learn a language, but the reality is that mine is a combination of methods which evolve with time. So what do I do when I have reached an intermediate level? Well, again, I change the what and I change the how. Most often than not, I find some resources on the internet, podcasts with scripts and audio that I can keep working on, but I do not use my bidirectional translation anymore. I do more intensive listening and reading and jotting down vocabulary. And also I start talking with some tutors online or with some friends. And in the advanced phase, I do something different, such as starting watching movies or starting absorbing more authentic content. The key point here is that you should not ask yourself whether you are beginner, intermediate, or advanced. I think that it's much more important to focus on building a consistent system that works for you, a kind of mental framework where you constantly know where you are. And if you do that for one language, then you can simply replicate it for any other language. It really helps you not only figuring out where you are, but also motivates you in the long run because you know where you're going. Learning a language is a little bit like climbing a mountain or setting upon a very long journey. It takes time. It's an endless journey, actually, because we never stop learning. So instead of focusing whether you're constantly making progress, because if you're walking or you're climbing or you're running, you are getting to your destination, you're getting closer and closer, I think you should focus on the small victories that are along the journey. Let me give you an example about what I do when I happen to have these eureka moments or celebrate victories. When it comes to reading, I really get excited when, for example, I stumble upon a Wikipedia article about something I really like and I understand the gist of it. Whoa, that's great. Or when I listen to something, a podcast or a movie, and I start understanding bits and pieces of this. I clearly remember when that happened when I was watching a Swedish movie. I got so excited about that. Speaking, when I first have a conversation on Skype with someone and I can get my point across, or when I stumble upon someone, I'm in a given country and I happen to have a conversation with someone. That happened in Hungary, in Budapest, some 3 years ago. I had started learning Hungarian for some time and then I started talking to this granny who could actually understand me. I was so excited about that. These are small victories. These are the things you want to focus on because these small victories will push you through, exactly like they will push climbers to move from one base camp to the other. You reach this thing. So there you have it. First, focus on the system instead of goals. Setting up goals is fine, but I think that refining the system is so much better because at the end of the day, that's what is going to allow you to learn in the long term. Second, develop your own mental representations of where you stand and where you're going. In my case, it's beginner, intermediate, advanced, and each stage corresponds to a certain kind of material I use and how I use it. And third, celebrate small victories because small victories do count and add up in the long run. As usual, this video comes with a very lengthy and thorough article I've put together on my blog. If you like the content of this video, you can click on the link in the description box and you will find a ton of other material, resources, links, and whatnot. Thank you very much for listening to me, and I'll talk to you very, very soon.